Tell us how you really feel. The Redskins currently sit in second place in the division at 4-2, right behind the 5-1 Cowboys, and Dallas already has a win over the Skins in Washington. Stephen A., do you have a problem with the Redskins talking trash like this?
Well, first, before I answer that question, let me look into the camera at those Redskins players out there. Bravo! Bravo! You're the champions of the NFC East. Wow!
What?
I'm so touched. I mean, can we stop and throw a party in the nation's capital? You are the champions of the NFC East. I'm so touched. I'm so touched. Where's the tissue at? Look, let me wipe my tears away, Max, because, I mean, this is just so touching. I can't believe, I'm getting emotional right now. The Washington Redskins are the champions of the NFC East. By the way, a division where they were the only team above 500, and you won a cookie. You're going to literally walk through a locker room, through the hallways, en route to your locker room, bragging about the fact that you're there. We're the real champions of the NFC East. What do you want, a cookie? No wonder y'all are losers. See, this is the kind of stuff that we're talking about here. That makes no sense. Makes no sense, and I'm not calling them losers because of their record, because they're the reigning NFC East champions. I'm not calling them losers because they're not losing this year. They're 4-2. I'm talking about a loser's mentality. You have been inept. You have been non-existent. When's the last time you've won a Super Bowl? We talk a lot about the Dallas Cowboys. When's the last time the Redskins have been relevant in the championship equation of things? And then you walk around after beating the Philadelphia Eagles with a rookie quarterback, by the way, because no matter how well Carson Wentz has looked, he's still a rookie. But you walk around, and because you beat a rookie with Jordan Matthews, devoid of much of a running game, with Doug Peterson not using Darren Sproles as much as he should, with the defense that's just relieved that Chip Kelly isn't their coach anymore. You beat them in the nation's capital on your home turf, 27-20, and you want to celebrate like you're champions of something. This is why the Redskins are not winning, because of an attitude that's asinine like that. Could you do something, please? And oh, by the way, had the temerity, the unmitigated gall, to sit up there and bloviate about this stuff, and you ain't even in first place. You a game behind a team you've already lost to this year, which would happen to be the Dallas Cowboys, who also has a rookie running back and a rookie quarterback, and they beat you. And you gonna sit up here because you beat the Philadelphia Eagles, you running the NFC East? Shut the hell up. Just stop it. Nobody wants to hear that from the Redskins. I'm sorry. I know you just won the game. You're excited, and all of this other stuff. Nobody wants to hear it. The bottom line is you got a season to produce, and you should be competing for a championship if you were really that damn good. By the way, the Redskins ranked 28th against the run. I just thought I'd throw that out because the team that you happen to lose to happens to be a dude that's not only in line for Rookie of the Year, but is a league MVP candidate who also happens to be in your division, who already beat you. But you talking. These are the Redskins. That's their damn problem.
I don't have such a big problem with guys feeling themselves on the way to the locker room after a win against a divisional rival. That's not the big deal to me. Of course, it's absurd to think that they have separated themselves somehow from the rest of the NFC East. No one has, including the Dallas Cowboys. We'll get to that in the next segment. My problem is, as a Giants fan, they're calling everyone but the Giants. People think it's the Eagles. People think it's the Cowboys. It's us. Hold on. Washington franchise has won an NFC East title as though that's a thing in recent years. 0 Super Bowls. The Cowboys, 0 Super Bowls. Let's take the last 10 years. The Eagles, 0 Super Bowls. But the NFC East is still repping with 2 Super Bowls because of my New York Football Giants, Stephen A. Smith. And if you look at the Washington record over the last decade, I know these players aren't thinking about the problems of the franchise over the last decade. They're thinking about right now. But over the last decade, because this is the way fans are receiving it, in a rivalry-heavy NFC East, last 10 years, Washington has the worst record in the division. Last 5 years, Washington has the worst record in the division. Last 3 seasons until this one, Washington has the worst record in the division. And for them to act, and this is the way that franchise always is, and I understand because I lived in D.C. for 15 months when I was hosting Around the Horn, going back about 12 years already, and that town is obsessed with football. I mean, when Gibbs came back and started coaching, every cab driver, every person walking in the street, that's all they could think about was the Washington football franchise. They are football obsessed, but they've given their fans very little to root for. So I understand if these players are feeling themselves because they had a significant win. But the way the rest of the NFC East rivals fans are going to hear that is, what are you, of all the franchises in the division? Let me tell you something as a Giants fan. Every year I go into the season, I think Eagles are going to play us tough, regardless if they're terrible and we're good or whatever. They're always going to play us tough. Cowboys are always going to be talented. They're going to have a lot of media attention, whether or not they realize the talent. The one rivalry, and I realize the Giants blew it against Washington late already this year. Blew it, though. They should have won that game. The one franchise I look at and I go, at least they're in the division, year in and year out, is Washington. As an NFC East fan of another team, I go, Cowboys I got to watch, Eagles I got to watch, at least Washington's in the division.
Well, let me say this about the Washington Redskins, because I got a few players in that side, that locker room I'm pretty damn tight with, got a lot of love for them. But collectively, I'm just speaking as an organization. Yep. I have been on the airwaves. We all know that I despise the Dallas Cowboys, but it's not because of the team. It's because of their fan base, because I think it's the most pathetic fan base in the history of America. I think they're disgusting. I can't stand Dallas Cowboy fans everywhere. I just can't stand them. Everybody knows this about me. I hate them. I really, really do. The fan base, not the team, but I hate the team because of their fans, okay? But I've been on the Dallas Cowboys because they haven't won a Super Bowl since 1995. Washington Redskins haven't won a Super Bowl since 1991. The Washington Redskins have not won a Super Bowl in more than 25 years. The Washington Redskins have been to the playoffs 6 times in 25 years. 19 out of the last 25 years, the Washington Redskins have been home watching the postseason just like the rest of us. And I would appreciate it. This is just my own personal thing going on here. I would appreciate it deeply if the Washington Redskins would be sensitive to people like me, who are umbilical cords and extensions of their fan base, because I'm no Washington Redskins fan, but I'm no Washington Redskins hater. But I have loved ones who are diehard fans of the Washington Redskins, and I would ask the Washington Redskins as a favor to them, just out of core decency alone, recognize the level of ineptitude that you have exercised for 2.5 decades and have the decency to shut the hell up and just go out there and win something more than an NFC East division that half the time is subpar. Could you win a playoff game? Could you make me a favor, please? Not do me a favor. Make me a favor, pretty please, with sugar on top. That's all I ask. That's all I ask. All I ask.
Washington has not only not won a Super Bowl in a quarter century, because the Eagles have never won, but they've never been the dominant force in the division. Like the Giants, twice in recent years, were written off early in the season. No one was thinking about them in the preseason. They weren't supposed to do anything, and they won 2 Super Bowls. But you can argue, yeah, they've missed a lot of playoffs, fine. But they won 2 Super Bowls in the last decade. The Cowboys are always a central story in the NFL, good or bad, and they've been good recently. The Eagles have had runs where they've been the dominant force in the NFC East, double-digit win year after year after NFC championship games. That has not been Washington's history. It's not just that they haven't won a Super Bowl. They haven't gotten to the level in those respects of any of the other franchises in their division.
As far as Washington being the NFC East champs, there hasn't been a back-to-back champ in 11 years. Since 2000-2001, it was the Eagles. Meanwhile, Bengals linebacker Vontaze Burfict already missed the first 3 games of the season thanks to a suspension for a helmet-to-helmet hit in last year's playoffs. So his actions in Sunday's game against the Patriots shows he may not have learned too much from that time off. The NFL is reviewing 2 plays from the game. The first, a low hit on Martellus Bennett. After the game, Bennett said Burfict did apologize to him and told him it wasn't intentional. And the second play, an alleged stomp on LeGarrette Blount after a late touchdown. So a decision on potential discipline for Burfict is expected no later than Wednesday afternoon, a league source telling ESPN. Stephen A., how should he be punished?
It will not happen in all likelihood, because it's really difficult to define what level, whether or not this warrants a suspension because of the things that were transpiring and the visual that they have. Not only that, measuring intent. Remember, he went low, he didn't go high. So because of that, he probably won't end up getting suspended. It is my opinion, and I hate to say this, it's my opinion that Vontaze Burfict should be suspended at least a couple of games. I want to make sure that I'm clear about that. And I want to make sure that everybody understands I take no joy in saying that This guy has had a very, very difficult upbringing. He's overcome a lot in his life. I'm quite sure he's a better person than he displays himself as being on the field, because you don't hear too much about him off the field. I remember last year, Max, in the interest of full disclosure, Pac-Man Jones, who I've known for many years, I've interviewed him on several occasions. I'm very, very fond of Pac-Man Jones. I think he's overcome a lot himself, and he's a really good brother. He called, and the conversation that we had ain't suitable for FCC airwaves, at how he was going off in defense of his guy, Vontaze Burfict. The only reason I'm letting you guys know about that conversation is because Pac-Man Jones never hid the fact that it was okay for me to expose that conversation, because I would never do it otherwise. So he came to the defense of a Vontaze Burfict. But I would also tell you what I retorted. I retorted at the time the same thing I'm about to say now. Troy Vincent, VP Football Operations NFL. Derek Brooks, Appeals Officer. John Runyon, former congressman, former Philadelphia Eagle, who's now the VP for Policy and Rules Administration, who's the guy that will make that decision within the next day or so, along with a bevy of others, Merton Hanks and others. At one point in time or another in the career of Vontaze Burfict, I have spoken to these individuals. They have given him chance after chance after chance, okay? They have sat up there, I mean, as recently as a week ago, I had one of the dudes, you know, in the appeals department, talked about how Vontaze Burfict was reached out to. He has been called. He has been emailed. They have reached out to him. He won't return people's phone calls. He won't get back to them. And they still reached out to him to make sure he knew they were pleased with him. They were encouraged by him, not just the professionalism he was displaying on the field, but what he was saying in post-game interviews and beyond, et cetera, et cetera. And a week later, here we are. You find yourself, first of all, he stomped on Blunt. It's clear he walked right into the scrum, and he put his foot on Blunt, which is why Blunt got up and shoved him. That's first of all. Secondly, you saw the low blow that he went to when he hit Martellus Bennett with. Okay? He's just standing there, and you literally dive for his leg. Those are career-threatening plays. You can rip somebody's cartilage. You can tear their ACL. You can do. You're trying to do that on purpose? Come on now. You can't have that. You can't have that. So something has to be done. I think right now, Max, this is the last thing I want to say. Somebody needs to look at Vontaze Burfict and ask him one simple question. Do you want to play in the NFL or not? Because they may not suspend him this time, but they are watching this dude, and they are not playing. They are not going to tolerate the kind of stuff that he gets himself into. I defended him at the beginning of the season. Remember that. You didn't. I can't defend this because you just fresh off of being suspended, and already you find yourself in the eye of the storm again. Makes no sense.
The reason I didn't defend him earlier in the season is because going into that playoff game against Pittsburgh last year on Sports Nation, Michelle and Marcellus and I were discussing Burfict and what are the odds he's going to do something. And my whole point, I turned to the camera and say, look, all eyes of the world are on Burfict. He's not going to do something stupid now. I mean, that's not when a guy misbehaves, whenever he knows the spotlight's on him.
And a week later.
And going into that, and then it was highlighted on TV. They need 14 yards to be in field goal range.
22 seconds left.
22 seconds left. It's an incomplete. He hands them 15 yards. Pac-Man Jones had no culpability there. Pac-Man Jones didn't do anything wrong in that game. But Vontaze Burfict sure did when everyone, that was the question heading into that game. The question, not about the quarterbacks, it was about Vontaze Burfict and his behavior. Would he blow it? And 14 yards, he hands him 15. You couldn't write in the script any better or worse. Okay, so that's when I'm like, okay, this guy has a problem. Stephen A., here's the issue here. Whether or not he gets suspended, he should be suspended 2 games. 1, for stomping on Blunt. The reason is, and Marcellus Wiley, who I worked with on the radio and TV, we saw each other 10 hours a day for 5 straight years plus. Used to talk about this all the time.
No wonder he's happy you're going.
he does look kind of happy now, doesn't he?
Nah. He misses you, bro. He misses you, bro.
So
right.
Marcellus used to talk all the time, a defensive end. He was an all-pro one year, a Pro Bowl player. When he was on the bottom of a pile, he grabbed someone's gut twist it. You do all kinds of vicious things to each other on the bottom of a pile. And, hey, if the camera picks it up, if you get caught, that's something else. But you don't want to. That's not what happened. Burfict is not in the pile. He walks over and in plain sight of everyone, stomps Blunt. One game. Okay, now we're talking about the Bennett hit. He went low, not high. That's true.
But it wasn't a play.
It wasn't. The ball wasn't coming to Bennett. The play was already over down the field.
And you had just finished arguing with him a few plays early.
So when I talk about Odell Beckham Jr., hey, Stephen A., it's impulse control. He took off his helmet. Those are relatively benign infractions, and I'm mad at Odell because he's actually hurting the team. But in Burfict's case, these are major infractions, injury-causing infractions, potentially career-ending infractions in Bennett's case, and it's hurting his team. That's a problem.
Vontaze Burfict had been fined about 4 previous times in 2015 alone, including the $50,000 fine a week before the Steelers game, week 17, going into week 17. So now you have this. Between James Thrash, Derek Brooks, okay, Troy Vincent, Merton Hanks, Lord knows who else, they have been on the phone or in person with this man on at least 15 separate occasions. 15! Enough's enough. Vontaze Burfict needs to ask himself one question.